Great. I think we are live. Okay. Thank you to all our guests for joining us. I'm really excited to share what we've been working on for the last half of the semester. I'll ask each of our guests. Oh, whoa, I'm doubled. Okay. I'll ask each of our guests to introduce yourself, just so that you come up on the speaker view. Just give us a hint of what you're working on at the moment or who you're teaching. That would be great. We have 10 students. Each of them has a 2-minute movie. It's a fake animation, so it's made of about 8 to 10 renders. So they'll present during the movie for 2 minutes, and then we'll have about 10 to 15 minutes of discussion for each student. So we'll go one by one. For the students, we may end up going a little bit faster or a little bit slower, so stay around the whole time and be ready for when it's your turn. So yeah, thank you for joining us, and I really welcome any comments, and all your feedback is really appreciated. This is a really work in progress review. As you saw with Florencia, we're not yet on the site. So the students have about 8 classrooms right now, and after midterm, we're going to grow onto the site and expand to 30 classrooms and larger buildings. I'll also, before you introduce yourself, I'll give a little introduction to our section specifically. So let me share my screen. Okay. So I think in the link tree, you have the link to our Miro board, where you'll see all of the sections. Next to ours, I've put a little PDF here, and it just gives a little bit of a background of how the students started. So in our class, we started with toys and chairs, and it was called, our section's called Toys and Drapery. So a lot of the students used 3 chairs and 3 toys and began to use them as primitives to make their furniture. So we spent at least a quarter of the semester so far on the furniture. So it's nice to look back, and I think in the animations, you'll see the furniture first, and we slowly zoom out to the classroom. Each week, we were to zoom sort of hypothetical 10 feet. So we started with the chair, table, interior of the classroom, the overall volume of the classroom, to 3 classrooms to 8 classrooms. So you'll hear the students referring to particular moments in the zooming out. Great, so Andrea, are you here? Can we introduce each other? I don't think he's here. Okay, let's go to Angelica.
Hi everyone. I'm Angelica Lorenzi, and I'm a faculty at SciArc. I'm currently teaching at the undergrad level and teaching 2A. And funny enough, we're also doing an elementary school. So I'm very excited to see what you guys are doing here.
I was telling the students that I joined your games review, and it was super fun with the board games. Claudia.
Hi everyone, I'm Claudia. I'm currently teaching Design Theory and Pedagogy Studio with Yara Feghali, and I'm also teaching at Cal Poly Pomona as well. Thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to hearing all about the work.
It's great to see you, thanks. Damjan, I think we met in IDD with these students.
Oh, nice. Hey everyone, I'm Damjan Jovanovic, and I teach now I actually coordinate Studio 1A, which is the first semester of core at SciArc. So I'm super excited to see what you're
doing. Joy is here.
Hi everyone, my name is Joy. Like Florencia said, I just graduated 2 months ago from the MArc-1 program. So in a way, I never left SciArc. I'm currently Hernan's AT this semester for his studio. And thank you to Rachael for inviting me.
Thanks. And finally, we have Yara.
Hey, Rachael, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here. I'm a design faculty at UCLA, and currently teaching with Claudia Design Theory and Pedagogy at SciArc.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. We have a couple of design theory pedagogy students as well, jumping in and out. Reza, I see you there. Okay, so let's get started. Yuzi, I'm going to start with you. Let me share my mirror. Okay. So I'm going to play the video full screen and Yuzi will talk over the top, and then we'll either keep playing the video or come back to the mirror board. I think all of you have the link in the link tree.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Yuze, and so I will talk about it. My design started with 2 toy models. You can see it's on here. And these 2 toy models are inspired by canvas doors from childhood. The starting point of the design was simple geometry, circle and square. To make toy more cute, I add many elements such as fountain eyes and inflating lamps. After that, I made 2 series of tables and chairs based on toys. One series is to highlight the characteristic of toys and be more concrete, like sculpture. This kind of material inherits the plastic texture of toys, and other series is toy prototype attached to furniture. The toy image is integrated into sofas and chairs to make them look more fluffy. Later, the concept of toys was expanded to the design of the single room. I focus on finding a balanced relationship between toys and architecture. There are original toy elements and abstract toy elements in architecture. The inner shell encloses a regular building space and then carve the outer skin. This layer of outer skin with more spatial change is made through the toy elements. They together form the classroom. Then the left and right classroom space are connected by a toy-like staircase in the middle. And the building used the material and color of fake plastic toys to create a fairy tale atmosphere for classroom. In design of the site, I used the color change and the form change of the grass to form a kind of response with the building. There are also some color light formed by fake grass, which continue the color matching of the building, add a sense of mystery to the classroom, and highlight the atmosphere of fairy tale. On the ground, the space is divided by puzzle pieces to form some outdoor rest space for children. And when expanding to 8 classroom, I use labyrinths like outdoor venue to connect the classroom on both sides to form different partitions. Yeah, you can see. Yeah, I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Yuzi. You saw the full screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think in his renders, you can start to see some of the toys that he began with, and they became the building.
I'm gonna start off. I think this is it's a very beautiful project. You talked a lot about this like soft material. That you talked about, for example, like the grass, like, so it's not only like a soft material, but you also have something that might be organic. And I'm wondering a little bit, like, let's say if you were at SciArc, maybe starting the semester off with an object, maybe they would have asked you to fabricate it. And I'm wondering what kind of material you would have chosen.
Oh, yeah, you mean for which part?
For the desk. Let's start with the desk and the chair. For example, what kind of material would have you used?
Yeah, actually, those chairs is more like wax. How to spell that word? I forgot about. It's maybe like some kind of fabric, and those table are more like how to say cream, cur, 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 is this word.
Like a chrome metal, like a.
Yeah, this.
Like made from ceramics.
Yeah. We've been talking about like the plastic vinyl resins of the toys as well, the kind of squishy ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I'm imagining like you maybe using a material that from the first glaze it will look like something hard, something stiff, but actually it might be a squishy material. For example, as Rachael was saying, vinyl like the coat that vinyl has is like it's very shiny, it's kind of sleek. It's a material that you can work with in a pretty easy way. It's pretty stretchable, so it can follow very different shapes. But still, it kind of like allows you to have one certain feeling just by looking at it. Whether on the other side, the tactile feeling that you have, it's different.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a interesting point that Angelica is bringing up, because it makes me think about the use of these seats. And oops, I think I might have, sorry. And if you thought about, it seems fairly conventional that the seat looks like a seat, but did you think about, rethinking even the way, we're all forced to sit in front of our desk pretty much 100% of the day. I've even grown to hate my seat for the most part. And so I wonder, how can we challenge, our relationship with our desk space, our relationship with, being in Zoom and being in the classroom. Typically the classroom is not a comfortable place, to be. The tables are hard, the seats are hard, they're very compact. So I wonder, at the level of the seat, what more can you do with the seat itself, but also what happens when you aggregate them? Now you have a classroom with multiple students, with multiple people using the space. So I know I was looking through your the renderings that you have, and I'm not quite sure how that aggregates itself, but I think what you've rendered it very beautifully, and it's, really, I love the project and it's really fun, but I'm now wanting to kind of dive into like the value of each of the elements now, and how they might actually, how you might actually challenge the classroom format a bit further.
Yeah, I think that part I should more focus after the midterm.
Yeah, I was also wondering about the colors. Like you use this baby blue and this baby pink and these very pastel, colors that are imbued with symbolism. And I'm wondering, how have you, is it intentional? And I assume it is. And if you can talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, about the color, I would make because I really like some give the children are feeling in our maybe in a cartoon or fairy tale. They are like more fantasy when they are sit in those classroom, and so I choose some color or have a contrast, like the blue and the pink, and also I want to the classroom when it's in the night, it make more have some really fantasy light in the night. So I think these colors are more suitable for such atmosphere.
Yeah, I think, you know, the way you used the toys in different scales is super interesting. So the way they're small on the table, then they hold the table, then the classroom becomes inside the toy. I think that shift of scale is super intriguing. But, you know, when I focus on that section drawing, or section image or cut, however you want to call it, I see that the toy cut is being represented as an offset. You know, it's like the same shape from outside is on the inside too. And this is something that I would like you to challenge. I don't know, Rachel, what you think, but it's something that I would imagine cutting through a toy is discovering like a new interiority to it and not like an offset of it. So I think there could be another type of scale that you would deal with. Like I see an opportunity for something very exciting in terms of scale and boucher space.
Yeah, I agree with that. Maybe there are more toys inside, right? It's not like a void.
And they squish out.
Kind of, they start leaking out into the exterior. It's really a beautiful project. I just want to congratulate you on the images that you produced. They're really successful. And I really like this idea of starting from something that is kind of scaled to the human body, or this kind of very close looking at the toy first, and then starting to expand it almost as a zoom out of 10, which is like actually I think a more interesting way to think about it would be to think about like the zoom out of a software package, right? Something that you can understand. Like suddenly you can design from a very close up and then you start zooming out and see how that form or that object starts like propagating, aggregating, or becoming something different. I think it's really interesting. One thing that just stuck to my mind was this kind of table, the flat table, right? I mean, this is something we can always kind of discuss as a limitation of what we have to do as architects, like introduce these kind of like datums that are recognizable as architecture, a floor, a table, something like this. But I think in your case it's interesting also because you're starting to blend in the other section, kind of starting to blend this with the toys, and the toys start actually becoming already support, and somehow starting to integrate that. So I think that would be a challenge for the project as we go, right? To kind of like really look at the design of each element as somehow being composed of these different scales of toys and materials and textures, and it's going to be amazing, I'm sure, at the end. But you just have to go through that process, I think. So it is.
Thank you. Thanks for those comments. Let's move on to Haruka. Well done, Yuze.
Thank you.
Hello. Hi, could you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, cool. Okay. Should I start then, I guess?
Yeah, you see this full screen, right?
Yeah. I can see the screen.
Okay.
Okay, so hello, my name is Haruka, and the concept of my classrooms are to play around with the idea of the misleading scale between architecture and furnitures. So starting from small, I designed my furnitures such as tables and chairs by modifying and combining geometry of toys and normal objects so that the furnitures consist of both ordinary and unusual moments such as flat surfaces and unique curvatures. And then the geometry of the furniture is turned into the envelope of the classroom itself, with more intricate materialities assigned according to the different geometries. Some of the classroom envelopes are based on the shapes of the tables, while some are based on the chairs. So if you look at the whole classroom complex from the top view, although there are 8 classrooms altogether, it also generates a feeling of as if you are looking at one classroom with tables and chairs. And then the program of each classroom is also differentiated through the shape of the envelopes. The table-shaped classrooms have opaque skylights at the top with an open space underneath, which is designed for more public events and activities. And then the chair shapes classrooms have a more comparatively private and ordinary shapes, which would be used for more like regular classes and lectures. Here, this is a close-up view of the furniture site designed, which is the furniture scale shapes are then, as you can see later, is turned into the classroom envelopes with a larger scale and more complex materiality when you zoom out. Right. Here also the wavy landscape of the desert kind of landscape I have also corresponds to the draperies of the carpets placed in and outside the classrooms, also suggesting kind of the idea of misleading scale in between the furniture and architecture while generating a suggested circulation for the complex. So this is what I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me...
And yeah, those are the renders of the different objects. So yeah, with the single furnitures, I'm using like a single materiality, which here the tables are just like metallic. But then like when they are turned into a larger classroom envelopes, the different materials are assigned according to where it's flat and where it's not kind of differences.
I think you're very successful in producing this illusion of scale here. It's in most of these actual images, where we cannot read if this is somehow a set of furniture, or something on the table, or maybe even like a collection of buildings at some point. I think it's one thing that I think you might want to maybe start exploring is different rendering tricks for guiding our eye a little bit, like maybe like depth of field would be an interesting way to kind of play with this idea of making something huge into something very small and vice versa. And I think...
Oh, sorry, I just couldn't hear the last sentences you were saying. Sorry, maybe the audio.
Sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. Do you hear me?
Oh, yeah. I can hear now.
Okay. I was thinking about using maybe depth of field or similar kind of photographic techniques in rendering to maybe play with this idea of scale. Because I think as a reference, when you have a video and you have this idea of a zoom out, right? We can clearly read scale at some point, because then the zoom out will kind of eventually reveal the total scale of the scene that you're working with. But for the renders, you might want to start kind of producing this focus, like focal points for where you want people to actually kind of direct their attention to. Because I think as it is right now, it's very beautiful also because it is flattening space through just pure rendering. Like there are no kind of external like post-processing almost. This is not there yet, but I think you might want to explore some post-processing techniques here. And just as a reference, I think for everyone, I think the class would be interesting if you guys looked at the game called Everything by David O'Reilly. And because in this game, actually, it's kind of a hyper version of Powers of 10. Like Powers of 10, it kind of goes from a kind of picnic into the outer space, and then it goes into the skin. Like it's a zoom out and it's a zoom in. But in this game, the camera can go to any point, to any character, to any skin. It becomes a kind of virtual space. Yeah, Yara has posted the link, so definitely look into this, because it's kind of an interesting way of playing the scale with the virtual camera.
Oh, that'd be great. Actually, like with the video, like since I'm playing with like the different scales, yeah, like I'm sure like the zooming in and out could be more like designed intentionally to like talk about like my concept. Yeah, that's
really cool project. Really nice work.
I'm actually very fascinated by the way how you're flattening the desks in a way that I don't know if I'm sort of like influenced by the Super Studio, but it almost seems that the way how you're flattening them and putting the the squared, the checkered texture, it seems that those desks might become almost like infrastructural. And I think you might even play more with the idea of like scale and kind of start to re-question if the scale of the desk, how we have it now, it might be the right one. Because I'm wondering, what can you do with the bottom part of the geometry that you have of the desk? Because I don't want you to maybe just go for, oh, it's very beautiful, it's kind of like decorative. I think you have like a lot going on there, and maybe you can start questioning, as I was saying, like the scale of it. Maybe the desk become much bigger, and just the surface on top is used as a common desk, but everything happening underneath might become something different. And yeah, I totally agree with Damjan. It's a very, very compelling project.
I started thinking when you said, Angelica, about the underside of the table, because we cannot see that for this kind of zoom out motion. It would be interesting to understand like how that would become part of the project.
Yeah, also because, you know, this project looks at the school in what we call the normal, but the way how the students seem designing it seems like they're coming from a very personal, domestic point of view. Like, if I didn't know that those are classrooms, I might see them more as sort of like living rooms or bedrooms or kind of like spaces within a house, which I think it's very good. Just because like our house became the new school, gym, kitchen, like restaurant or whatever. But then I would really like push into asking yourself, if that's the case, what are the spaces that the students might need within a classroom? For example, a person like me that suffer of sciatica, I'm so happy that sometimes I don't have to sit on my chair and I can like sit on the couch and have still like and being still on a Zoom meeting, because like I now we have kind of the privilege that you can sit wherever and you don't have to be anymore on the uncomfortable chair. But maybe there are like other even like other activities that might happen within the classroom, or maybe different position of the body. I'm imagining, for example, what is the way how you can sit on some of these furniture. Maybe it's not anymore just like the way how we usually sit on a chair. Maybe there are like different positions, or maybe you can take different positions on the same piece of furniture.
I just wanted to make a quick comment about like the flat tabletop and the roof. Like, to me, I was kind of misreading them a little bit. And I think something that helped me differentiate was, you know, the books on the table. I know, like, as mundane as that is, I think having that one recognizable element really helps you connect it to what you're seeing. And I think because of the flattening of the roof, seeing that as also a tabletop, I think you might be able to implement some additional design decisions as you continue to develop the project.
I actually will reiterate that point, but Joy, I was also a bit disoriented at first because of the way you're scaling up and down the seat or the table. It's not quite clear at first, especially when you look at the overall aerial view, like what is inside, what is outside. Until you look more closely, and then you see, oh, that's the actual seat that one would sit in, and it's actually at this really tiny scale. So I think it's an interesting trick that you're doing, and I think it's something that maybe that you could experiment with a bit more. And to Joy's point, like, you've identified the tabletops at the building scale as the top of something, what does it occupy now? I don't know about just applying this kind of brick pattern on the roof, because you have, all these, playful shapes. It seems a bit like an outlier right now, the brick pattern. And to further upon the scale, I think you also need to then bring in the human scale, like an actual human figure, or what is the scale actually? Like, who's sitting in these seats is something, you're kind of like projecting, okay, someone's going to sit here, but if this is elementary school, correct, right, then that, the age difference, right, and is going to kind of affect the scale of the human, right? Like if you're in kindergarten, then you're very tiny. If you're at the end of elementary school, you've grown exponentially. So I think looking further at scale shifts, this is a school for children, then you're going to have adults in there too. So I think there's more radical scale shifts that you could continue to further upon.
I think that's a great point. As we add like triple this number of classrooms, how they can kind of sophisticate and change according to the year level that they're serving. And I also love that comment of Angelica's about designing the underneath. We've been in this constant debate with the powers of 10 about always showing top views, and everyone kind of wants to tilt and show the elevation. So it's been this constant battle between top and side and underneath. So I think that's a really great point to pick up on.
Hi, thank you for the comments. Could you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm so sorry. My internet just went wrong, so I'm using my phone now.
Oh, that's okay. We have a recording. Don't worry.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the comments.
Let's move on to Christy.
Hi, I'm Christy. Yes. This is my proposal for creating an experimental learning environment. My main concept is to create a warm and soft feeling space at the children's scale that facilitates learning through playing. So children could access knowledge through exploring different perspectives. All my furnitures and cloud-shaped spaces were originally formed from a single toy element. The furniture, you can see here, they kind of still maintain the playful features of the toy, which encourage kids to actively interact with the environment. The interactive surfaces were designed to have a variety of texture. The hard furniture surface contrasts with the soft furry materials like carpet and cushions. The color of the carpet adds the dynamic to the space, and it is placed near the hard cloud walls, which provide a feeling of safety. I use the blue material cloth to distinguish the space instead of the normal wall, so it provides a soft edge of the division, which allows kids to see through the whole space and observing the outside. It also offers an elevated playground, allows them to climb. The outside landscape is inspired by the Japanese Zen garden, which moves natural elements such as mountain and ocean into the garden. The dry landscape uses sand and gravel, representing water, which allows the participation of the kids into this human-controlled nature. The kids are able to create their own landscape through playing and learning. The volume of the classroom was also formed from the toy. From the exterior, those skylight volumes brings the diversity to the forms, and it also adds a light into the space and act as an additional interior wall, which creates some enclosure movement, so some kids, they can enjoy their own time, like while reading or playing. I think that's it. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Christy.
I think I really appreciate the fact that the aesthetical language changes from one scale to the other. So it's like looking at your first rendering, the closest one and the furthest one away. It would be, other than the ground, maybe it would be difficult to understand that they're the same project. And I think that's interesting to think that something changes in the scale, differently to maybe the previous project where it was like this confusion, right? This collapsing of different spaces. And I think it's done in a subtle way because you can still see like it's the same designer that has done both, but maybe in the shift in colors and in the smaller scale, you have more variables, whereas in the larger scale, you have more repetition. So I think there's something very interesting and very smart in that from your side.
Yeah, so for the environment, I'm trying to like use like more calm color, like more natural one. Well, like the furniture, I was kind of using, you know, those warm like kids liked color, trying to like having them, you know, like they trying to like start to recognize the color. It's kind of like, you know, you name like, oh, that blue book or that red carpet, and it's easier for them to remember them and learning from them.
Yeah, and I feel like your tables with these toys that look a bit like regular toy furniture, and at the small scale they're like this, and then at the large scale you revert them, right? It seems like you're building are on these rotating platform, and I think that's also very interesting. Like it feels like your work is very detailed oriented, and I really appreciate and congratulate you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think this one, with this project, there's a very clear ground plane, there's a very clear roof plane or like enclosure and inside and outside. And yeah, I think it is commendable that you've actually kind of you've essentially pushed the project past the kind of abstract and into more of the literal or the more realistic materials. And so I think it's, yeah, I think you've done a really great job. And I guess, you know, in terms of how to push the project forward, you brought up this theme of learning through play. And so I think if you could, to further the project, to really kind of unpack that, like what does it mean to learn through play, and what type of spaces are needed or classrooms are needed for that to happen. So I think that, you know, you obviously have a handle on like the scale and how to translate an abstract form into a building form. So I think the conceptual framework is something you really can spend time on.
Yeah, so like especially for my furniture design, you can see like those shelves, they are not like designed like the regular way you just place the toy, you kind of like insert them inside. And for the bottom of those tables, they kind of like keep some hard edge of the toy. So the kids, when, you know, sometimes they make handwork or mud, they kind of have those print from the table. So that's what I mean by like interact with them like from the different things.
Right. I think, you know, if you think about, you know, early learning, it's not always that they will be sitting at a desk. They might be playing in the playground, or they might be on the floor, or, you know, maybe there's like, I think there's a more diverse array of like the way how spaces are used to teach in early learning. And so I think you could actually, you know, challenge that too, because right now it's just, you know, still the table and the seat, which of course is part of the project brief, but I think you can again reevaluate that. What about the, the tables seem, again, it's like, you know, who's sitting there, but, you know, what about low tables or tables on the floor or seats on the floor, or, you know, high tables, or, you know, like I think there's more of a range and scale that can be explored.
I think I forgot to mention that those like cloud shape, like the wall, it was also kind of like the furniture that can climb and also sit there. So like if there's like small group like talking, they can actually like sit on those cloud, which I think it's kind of like, you know, different like levels of sitting and playing.
I think you're working with a very rigid structure organization, which is due by the fact that you are considering flat surface as the playground and everything else an accident. And I think that this dichotomy in between what is on top and what is below, what is the side, is something that when you play, you don't care about. So if we go and check, for instance, a designer like Isamu Noguchi, you're going to see that when you work with playgrounds, The flat surface is the infrastructure, is the one that you use to move, to place object, and everything else is where you play. So to me, this project is interesting because you are creating multiple planes, one on top of the other, dividing and separating the users according to the external world, where you have everything and then a plane. And then there is like the common area, and then there is a room, and then there is a chair, and then there is a table, and it looks like a cake. Is basically a pyramidal organization. I would challenge you for the next part of the semester. By the way, beautiful project. So I start from the fact that it looks fantastic, the materials are great, the cameras are beautiful, and you can just build from here. I think that from here is really about understanding what is everything that have been left so far, which has a gigantic potential in your analysis, I think, with the concept of play. So I will try to understand how surfaces can become a democratic space and not only a space of transition. And maybe the transition, that is something that you are not considering here, which is how to move from one desk to the other, from one room to the other, one space from the other, can become the place, the democratic space. There are, especially now, a lot of case studies of what learning is, where the classroom is what's left, and the corridors is really where things are happening. And I'm going to post some comments in the chat so you can see them. And I think you have a great place where to start from. Congratulations.
Yeah, I also want to say something in relation to Andrea's comment, which I think is very actually the point of this project here, because the previous project, what was really interesting about the previous project is that it wasn't, there was not a top-down hierarchy of modeling that was governing somehow the kind of spatial unraveling project, right? And I think what we have in your case is this, once we see this one image, which is kind of, right, maybe at the very end, when we see it from the side, right, we can see the hierarchy. We can see that actually there was a design intention that came from the outside, right? There was kind of a compositional strategy that was starting from this idea of plinth, object, plinth, and kind of this multiplication of these different rounds in the project. And it's very clear. Your project is very well composed. It's very clear. But you have to ask yourself then, does it then maybe betray a little bit the initial intention behind the brief to kind of liberate yourself, right, from that top-down compositional strategy to start actually looking at just the immediate surroundings of the body, then zooming out a little bit. The next domain, which is a little bit something bigger, but not that much, right? So in that way, you could produce a completely different kind of space that is not neat, that is not well organized, that is not sectionally, doesn't feel good as architecture in that way. Which this is something I can totally see that you're struggling with that. Probably you have it in your mind. Like, how can I make something which I like as a designer, which kind of follows the compositional kind of logic, and still be free within the brief constraints, which I think are very, very smart, because they're supposed to liberate you from exactly being that precise. You know, and this has to do, as also Andrea was talking, it has to do with the new models of play. And actually, everyone is talking about this now. Like, how can we mobilize play as a new principle for kind of spatial organization, right? So that it's not this top-down compositional elevation view where you're producing a beautiful artifact, right? When you see it from your side, your object, your kind of composition is really, there is an eye to it, right? It's kind of like, it's well done in a way, but it loses a little bit of that noise from the previous project that was so interesting, to me at least. I don't know what you guys think.
I have a question for Rachael. Is the is the school part of the LAUSD?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, because something that I very like of what it has been said already, but also from the project itself, is that the classroom, they sit on this sort of like little platforms in a way that what it seems here, you're kind of making your design in a positive way, almost like generic, in a way that you make the design kind of like repeatable. You make it in a way where the single classroom becomes a sort of like a module that you can aggregate together, and you can expand the space if you need more space, for example. But also the arrangement of these single like units or modules can be every time very different. At the point that a system like the LAUSD might ask you to say, okay, that system works there in the Elysian Canyon, but the same system might be used in another district of LA. And another thing that I really appreciate, even though you haven't gone yet through the site that much, but since the site is, or like the location of the school is next to the river, and you're talking about playing and learning, I'm wondering if there is possibility for the classrooms to be kind of like movable somehow, where at a point they can even be put in the river itself and not only on the side. You know, they look almost like they could be floating.
Like a boat.
Yeah. And you know, like with kids like learn a lot, especially if you look at the Montessori school system. Like they really like spend a lot of time outdoor because they play with natural elements and so they really think that you don't just learn in class, like in a frontal class, like at a lecture type of class, but a lot you learn by the experience that you have with the context that you have around, and maybe thinking how you can position yourself, kind of like wander around the site can be very interesting, especially since maybe, I don't know, most of the time those kids are gonna spend their time outdoor and not indoor anymore.
Yeah, I love those comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me just put Shichen back in the grid. Okay. Thanks, Christy. Beautiful project. And I've been thinking the same way Damjan was about how can we break out of this mold of the little pads for once it triples in size. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see what's next. Shichen, are you ready?
Yes.
My computer's a little slow.
And
okay.
The toy I chose is toy bears and toy truck. And this circular shaped table is combined on twisting chairs and toys trucks. So it creates circular communication area. And the left part of classroom is the teaching zone and covered with shred wall. And the right side is more like a private zone of the classroom. So students can find the place they feel secure at this area. And over the platform is the lounge area. So students can just relax on it. Yeah, and and the right side of the classroom is covered by a smooth bear-shaped shell, which is different with the shred wall on the left side. So it creates different characteristics for each single space. Yes, and the classroom is the floor of the classroom is a little bit floating over the ground, and for each classroom is connected by the different bear-shaped platform, which create several different squares, can be the playground of the school. Yes, and there are several openings over the bear-shaped shell, and there's a glass bear can be the skylight of each classroom.
Thanks, Shichen. Great.
Yeah, this is really cool. I love this project, and also the kind of inflatable head. It's something that Angelica was talking about, is this idea of like movable parts, and I think this would be one maybe version of that, where you could have different spaces kind of inflating and deflating, and so that this could become some kind of almost like an animate space. You know, I think you have a good intuition for this, because all of these figures they become almost like spherical envelopes, and they can be of any scale, right? They can hold a certain program, they can hold a certain, but they are all kind of spherical. So you might actually want to think about really starting to use like some simulation here to really work with this idea of inflating and deflating space in terms of, or as almost as a programmatic device to drive the kind of school idea. I think it would be amazing. I also really like the bears that are kind of scattered around. Sometimes they look like toys, sometimes like furniture, sometimes like a wall support in a weird, strange way. It's very like innovative and kind of creative use of that figure. It's really interesting. So
thank you.
Yeah. The other thing is I would just maybe you want to disrupt the ground plane a little bit further, because it does look a bit too flat to me. But I think make it dynamic, make it like almost like a diagram that starts stretching and playing around. It's gonna be
I just wanted to hinge on Damjan's comment about the inflatable. I think it's really interesting, that concept, because your material is either, you put air in it and it'll be blown up, but if you put helium in it, it'll float. So I think with the idea of inflating something, and depending on what kind of material you put in it, I think that juxtaposes with the rigidity of some of the like the bears that you're rendering out with, and so there's like a softness versus like something that's more rigid. So qualities of the inflatable and deflated could potentially come more into play as you develop.
I'm wondering if we can start looking at these projects as sort of like autarkies in a way that, because I was looking, okay, if you stop the video right now, also, oh no, actually, sorry, there is like a render right next to it. Like every single object in the design is, or in the project is designed by you. There is like one single chair that probably you downloaded from the internet. And I don't think you need that. Like, I think that this project, or maybe like all of these projects, like this semester project, so to say, this studio project, it's really about modeling every single piece from, and that's maybe why also you started from a furniture piece, Usually when you start the opposite, you design your envelope, you design your ground, and then there is a moment where you go on the internet and you're like downloading like a huge amount, like a huge folder full of OBJs. And then everyone is like, oh, I have some desks here. I have, I don't know, some chairs. I have some cabinets, and so on and so on and so on. So I really think that you should kind of like be the author of everything that is in here, like every single piece. Also because you're doing it in a pretty good way. So, and that kind of like goes back also to the idea of like having things moving, or maybe slightly like morphing from like one, maybe, I don't know, maybe from one function to the other, maybe from being like carrying like one program to another type of program within the same building,
Okay.
I also love what you're doing, sorry, with the half of your shells when they start to become, there's like one that is like slightly yellowish. It has like a weird like tectonic. Yeah, that one, there is like one is blue and one is yellow. I like when you start to like break down the single surface, because you might start to think about like, how can you, I don't know, open those classrooms to the outdoor space. Maybe those are like sliding walls, or maybe they can open so you can attach another one next to it, and you double the space of a room. Super nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Come a long way this week, Shichen. Thank you. Okay. Next we have Poppy.
Hi everyone, I'm Poppy. So our group start with toys, and what I did at first is I duplicated toys and blend them to make some small furniture at first. And you can see this one is a candlestick, and this is a floor lamp, and this is a bookshelf. And when it goes to bigger furniture, I try to keep the characters of the toys as much as possible during designing this kind of furniture. As you can see, like the puzzles become seats, and then the parts of the toys become the support of the table or the back of the chair. And when it goes to the interior, I make it relatively simple compared with the toys. You can see there are the curved windows and the rock surface walls. And then when it goes to classroom, I continue the concept of puzzles. What you see is a volume of 3 rooms, and there are classrooms, reading rooms, places for eating and playing. There are a lot of like same public spaces in these volumes, and I think children could decide their function according to their wishes. And then when it goes to 8 classrooms, I separate the toys to different directions. And then, you know, just like what the children would do, they put their toys everywhere. And then I make some landscapes and then put some landscape furnitures and on that ground. Yeah, this is a bird view of what I got so far. Thanks for watching.
Thank you, Poppy.
Beautiful work. I think it's remind me, and please, Angelica, feel free to jump in. It reminds me of 2A in terms of discussion, since you have, let's say, your different classroom your classroom look different. And that makes me think about function in a way, like what is the difference between the first, like the youngest kids and what they get taught and the oldest one? And are you reflecting this also in terms of aesthetic, in terms of the size of the room? Because there's so many studies, right, on how big does a classroom needs to be for a younger versus when you're older, what kind of tools do you need in that room? What is the percentage of being, let's say, outside, inside? And I'm wondering if all these different parameters is something that you take into consideration. Maybe that's also for you, Rachael.
Yeah, what I think is like, because you can see they are like in the 8 classroom plans, and they are different, like classrooms in 3 in 1 is basically like that. Because I think the most important 3 functions, like there should be a reading room, there should be a place to taught indoor, and then the others could be open. So yeah, that's what I think. But I didn't really like how to say, make it into detail. I just know there are like 3 functions at least. So that's how I like put these puzzles, how to organize them.
I mean, I'm mentioning this because I think there's an opportunity there for design, you know, and the younger students' classroom could be connected with the same outdoor space, whereas the older maybe need to be separated. And I think these type of aggregational strategy could be something that plays into what you're designing. So how is the aggregation of furniture in a room different than the aggregation of rooms within urban space? And I think that's really a question that you need to address, maybe on the second half of the semester, but that is something that you would need to address as the 2A studio is addressing too.
Yeah, I need to think about that. Yeah, thank you.
There is also something like about your rendering, like the black and white ones. It's funny because I was right before this this review, I was listening to this YouTube video on Federico Zeri, who was it has been one of the biggest art historians of Italian paintings. He died in like 1998. But he was talking about how he prefers pictures of paintings which are in black and white instead of in colors. And he says that he likes them more because colors are confusing for him. And that somehow, even if you're not using too many colors, but somehow I can have a better understanding also of scale, which is something that to me is a little bit confusing here in your project. I don't know why, but in the black and white, it starts to become maybe clearer to me, and it has to do with what is white becomes bigger and becomes kind of like the surface. You know, to me, it seems more like the space. It's like the description of space comes out through the white color, where the black becomes sort of the detail, and maybe something that has to do more with the size of the object. Maybe, I don't know, maybe that could be like a way how to start like distinguishing a little bit more what can be used as a furniture, what can be used as a space, and maybe even if there is a moment in between when one becomes the other, you know, because I think that it's totally a possibility here.
I wanted to ask about that actually, Poppy. Like, what is your thinking behind having like a black and white set and then having a color like set? How are you thinking about this? It's very interesting, and I agree with Angelica. Yeah, I think there is something there that black and white has, that it becomes a little bit more somehow significant, or you can see the composition, you can understand. But then the color brings a kind of a degree of arbitrariness into it somehow, right? But maybe that's just my reading. How are you thinking about this?
Well, I actually started with the white. You can see like the furniture, toys, things. And yeah, at the very first, I don't want to add colors at all. I just want to be pure white. But later I found it's really, really confusing, you know, especially when rendering, I feel like I will go blind and that there's nothing to stress on this one. But I don't want, yes, as you said.
That's a fascinating point, seriously. And also what Angelica said, I think, because I also read a story somewhere that Vincent van Gogh, like some of his, if you know his early work, it's very gray and brown. Like there's not much color in his early work, actually. And that is because some historians say that he was kind of afraid of color, right? He was afraid that he will go crazy if he starts which actually happened. So there you have it. But there is a resistance to color, I think, that in the work that is clear. But I also think that you're very talented in terms of color, so you should be careful about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, with the kind of the white renders, I think of a bit about Yayoi Kusama's alliteration room, where, you know, she leaves a blank space and allows community engagement in a way so that it's kind of like a live demonstration of art, where, you know, anyone can come in and, you know, put a sticker on the wall, and now they're part of this artwork. So I think there's something to the white forms where it could be about you know, maybe the temporal nature of education spaces and how they change over time, and allowing students and children to become part of the identity of the spaces that they're learning in. And yeah, and I'm not so sure about, and it's not even about the color of the second one, but of the second series, but more about the way you've generated form and organization. Maybe it's more about the form than the organization, because I like the idea that this is you know, these parts or puzzle pieces that can be aggregated. But then it's, when you look at the scale of them, it brings up more questions, because then I see a stair. Is the stair the true scale? Because then maybe these are too small. So I think there is something to both, but they're not quite working together yet.
I think also that's a great point, also because these are two very different systems and so formal strategies. One is kind of a tableau. It's more like, let's say, how do you say it? Like still nature, almost the upper one, right? And the second one is a component-based system that I think is really interesting when you start scattering them around, because that produces interesting spaces. But yeah, definitely the scale then becomes an issue with that one. The problem with the first one is that it's tied to the ground plane and it's baked in, right? There is an idea of space being baked in somehow. Clearly, you cannot evolve it in some way. That doesn't scale up. It just might like aggregate in some ways. So I think you have like two different ways you can think about this project right now. I think you either really double down on the component, color, scatter, and scale in different ways, and then you start like composing these things, which I think is very promising. The other one looks really too much like still nature to me, almost like or like a tableau or something where it's more like an installation scale. And as I understand, it comes before actually this one, right? It's just an additional state, so it makes sense. It's a migration from Van Gogh's early work into the mature work that's happening, which is cool.
Great. Thank you, Poppy. This is the first time we've seen the color, so it's going to be an interesting conversation next week.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. We're supposed to take a 5-minute break. Does anyone need a break? Should we keep going? Up to you.
Let's go.
5-minute break.
Let's go. Oh, Claudia, really? Oh.
Sorry, I needed to.
Okay. I'm gonna go have a coffee then.
Okay, we'll see you at 3:30. 4 minutes. Thank you, everyone. Andrea, how are you?
Hello, so good to see you.
I did introduce you even though you were missing.
Sorry, I was trying to not be kicked out from this country. Never worked, by the way. No, I'm joking, I'm joking. How are you doing?
We're great.
Yeah?
Nice to share the work.
Yeah, I love that. I'm curious to see what's going on in here. So nice to see so many faces that we saw in IDD and then they disappear from my radar. I saw Haruka. She must have forgotten me.
I think about half were your students, right?
Hello.
Ciao, Haruka.
Hey.
Good to see you back.
Good to see you again too. Sorry, my internet is like pretty unstable, so I didn't have my video.
I'm not gonna judge you for that. I'm gonna judge you because I see you just from your eyes up, but the internet is fine. Are you doing well?
Yeah, pretty good. Just the internet just died like when I was hearing my comment. That was bad. But other than that,
You had a beautiful project for midterm. Internet is not an issue.
Thank you.
Ciao, Jiafeng. You change the space where you're working from, but it's always you. I see.
Okay, one more minute and then we'll get on to Sophie. How's everything, Reza?
Great, thank you.
Have you been on a lot of reviews this week?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. I can see how your studio goes until midterm. It's really nice.
Thank you.
When is midterm of VS, by the way?
VS, 2 weeks ago.
Oh, already happened? Oh.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go in the archive and see what's happening there too. I'm curious.
They're about to start a 2-week grasshopper workshop. We'll see.
Who's the instructor?
Oh, Karime. Let's get back to Sophie. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Oops, sorry. Let's go.
Okay. So the project being school for kids, I wanted to take more of a playful approach, and I came up with these immersive toy caves. The toys in question being giraffes and teddy bears, and the furniture interlocks. For the tables, we can see that they're made up of different toys with only small hints of the toy itself. For the giraffe toys, they're kind of benches with 2 drawers where we can see the velvet and the head of the giraffe kind of bending so they can sit over it or,
Okay, I will skip ahead to, we'll start here.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So here we can notice the ceiling. That's kind of a reflection of the plan onto the ceiling with the toys falling off and sometimes even being transparent to become skylights and allow light into the classroom. Here's the plan. We can see that they're made up of 3 different parts. The main one that's more playful and kind of a playground and a classroom, and then the sphere with a more serious, calm desks and the one on the right could be like a storage space. And there's a duality between the interior space and the exterior. Some of the classrooms are on platforms, and here we can see the 8 different classrooms that are made up of different combinations of the same elements. And I also worked a lot on the synthetic landscape that eats up the classrooms and also kind of combines them all together. So the materials I used are mostly velvet because of like the duality in the colors, but I also played around with reflectivity and transparency with the outside of the classrooms, but as well as the inside. So there are no corners in general. I wanted the whole thing to be very playful and to kind of ignite the children's sensitivities, whether it's the tactile through the touch and the softness of all of the fabrics and the different materials, or the color range, and as well as their mobility. They can sit anywhere, they can climb everything, and they can like do whatever kids do, whether it's outside of the classroom or inside. Thank you.
Good. It's all about texture. Thanks, Sophie.
Thank you.
I'll scroll through your renders.
Sophie, does your landscape produce sound or
Sorry?
noise? Is your landscape making any type of noise or sound?
Not yet, no.
But should?
It could, yeah.
Because what's to me, so you're giving so much value to that aspect, and everything is so muted architecturally and so exuberant in terms of multiplicity in the landscape. It makes me think how your research in the tactile could be limited if you don't include other senses. So your buildings, they look like they're trying to give the least amount of information possible, which is a strategy that a lot of classrooms in the past were used to do, so that they were able to concentrate and focus the attention on the subject and not in the surroundings. And this strategy became also a way of creating spatially, you say, inhibitors. Basically, there are some rooms where your senses, they tend to be shut down. So it's, to me, weirdly interesting, the relation between these two, where on one side of the classroom as a space is completely negating its own existence, and the landscape instead is overwhelmingly out and could be accessed outside of these very muted barriers. So I don't know if your narrative could aim at saying how you're trying to enhance the perception of the students in the landscape by having objects that they create an ecology and an ecosystem with sound, with colors, with noises, while everything that happens inside is a lot more constrained, so that when students come out of the classroom, they can have this explosion of senses beyond their daily routine inside the class. Yeah, think about it. I think this could be a way to explain a little bit better what happened with these rooms that per se, they are not exploring the potential of the architectural element yet. And maybe you don't want that. Or maybe you do, you let me know.
Rachael, I have a question. Was it a requirement for the students to produce enclosure when it came to the classroom spaces?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, as much as we've been talking about inside out guide, landscape learning as well. So yeah, but some form of closure for the 2 days that it rains in LA. Yeah. Yeah. In this project, it's been really fun to discuss how like the furniture on the ground could get reflected onto the ceiling, and in a way that the ceiling kind of reflects and does as much work as the furniture on the ground.
I was thinking like it's really an amazing, beautiful project. I really like it. I was thinking probably in the project that there are many different types of ground, right? So sometimes you have very soft ground, and then you kind of like almost stumble in. You don't understand like that everything is like super, it cannot support it, right? And maybe that's also the idea that you can have with like different, or let's say children of different age groups could access different kinds of spaces based on just the variation of the ground materiality. I think this is what, if I were you, I would definitely work on this idea of the ground here, because there is so much potential to kind of extend that. The capsules are one thing, but you could have multiple levels, not just this one level. Definitely have.
Yeah, I agree with that comment. That was something I was thinking about it. The ground condition is fairly stable, especially once you're inside the pods. And I wonder about destabilizing the ground more. Can there be, instead of it being only an additive process, right? You've added these, pill-like structures, you've added these, spherical structures. What about, removing ground? Can there be more ground underneath? Can it peel up? Can it undulate more? I agree with Amy. I think there's more you could do with the ground condition. I think that's the kind of unique aspect with your project. It's, it's actually not, maybe the classrooms themselves, like the enclosure is could be muted, could be like subdued, but it's the ground that starts to move and create that visual kind of, exuberance, or even, through circulation and how you sit and where you teach.
But I also think that you can think about your design in almost like in events. It almost seems that the second render in the first row, it almost seems a picture taken like at, I don't know when schools get out of school, but let's say 6 p.m. when all the kids left and went back home. And imagining that, I like this idea that the landscape outside is kind of like structured. And I'm thinking if the students every morning can kind of like disrupt the landscape and start picking elements and take them inside of the classroom, so that actually the classroom starts as just as a shell, an empty space, and you can have this differentiation in the landscape given by, for example, how much the space is utilized by the students. So basically, when the students are not there, the landscape is sort of like complete, whether it starts to kind of like decrease its density when the students start to go inside of the classroom. And that also, it goes back to the idea of playing and learning. I was talking with my students, for example, about you don't only like learn through, I don't know, a math class, but you also learn about, I don't know, taking your toys or taking your books and put them back where they have to be. Or I had some students, for example, they told me that after they had their lunch at the canteen, they had to wash their dishes and then bring them back. So all those like sort of activities that also are part of the school kind of like process. Maybe there is something that, I don't know, there are special objects that the kids can like pick in the landscape. Maybe those are their seats. They can't sit in the class unless they take their seats outside and they bring them into the class itself. And then they can bring them out again. And that kind of gives you a transition every time.
Yeah, I think that's really like the core of where your project is successful, is that notion of discovery, and what Angelica has been describing as your proposal being not fixed, but being a state of constant change. So like the toys could be anywhere, the volumes could be anywhere. And the whole point is that from the outside, it looks like mundane, but when you go in, you discover like this whole world where your giraffe could be on the floor, it could be on the ceiling. You could, a bit like to what Andrea was saying in the start, like you could touch the walls, you could hear the giraffe. It's like this world of phenomenological experiences that you would go through as a child to understand the world. And it even feels that the landscape, which is like these green things, are things where you can jump on it or you can go inside of. I think like this interchangeability of plan, and that it's not a fixed aesthetical proposal, but it's a conceptual proposal, is really strong. And yeah, beautiful work, Sophie.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just to add one thing, I think, to that point, for me, it was me, you know, there might be a question at some point, like how does your project not become a theme park, for example, right? How does that, or is there a difference between a theme park and a kind of a school, right? So I think exactly as Yara is saying, I think you need a theory of interactive kind of discovery-based education to support this project. Otherwise, it might be always a question. So, right, but they can go to Disneyland and have all these kinds of experiences, right? And I think you can look into, I'm going to link this, you can look into this instructionism kind of history. That is very, very important 20th century learning theory, right? Based on this idea of exploratory, let's say, engagement or interactivity with the world, where you're not learning something from books only and kind of being kind of trained to be a human, but you're kind of allowed to explore what is interesting to you, right? So I think just in terms of the presentation, when we frame this, we might want to kind of have a certain kind of a theory of interaction with the space. Otherwise, it's really super nice.
I just wanted to provide like a quick reference, but it reminded me a lot about the reversible Destiny Lofts in Nikita, Japan. It's by Arakawa, and basically it was on the philosophy of procedural architecture, and really aiming to challenge and stimulate the senses. You know, the ground is uneven and there's like a lot of playful spaces, and they're designed as apartment complexes. Yeah, that's the one. So I visited last year, it was really cool. But just, you might want to look into that.
Thank you so much for the comments. I think, yeah, bringing into consideration like the behaviors of the students themselves could really add like an interesting layer to the project. Thank you.
Yeah, those comments have added like a layer of optimism. I feel happy again. Thank you. Jiafeng. Let's go.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jiafeng. And the topic of our group is toys, so I combine the toys with furniture and then design the sofas and table and also chairs. And here's my classroom. It is an open 2-floor classroom. A student can run to the second floor through the ramp, and I also use a wide structure to divide the first floor into 3 different study space, and yeah, and this is the side view of the classroom. And this is the layout of a classroom. I modeled a huge ramp to group 2 or 3 classrooms. The support of the ramp is made by the toys, and the ramp also connects with the second floor of the classroom. And then I create a huge bubble to cover each group, and some parts of bubble use gas to make sure sunshine can pour into inside. For landscape, I made some platform outside or between each of group and use paths to connect each platform and classrooms. And at the same time, the paths also divide the ground into some small garden, and that's all.
Thank you.
6 chairs. I love those.
It's one of the more sophisticated, sinister kind of classrooms of our bunch.
And then coffee mugs.
Do you have a good do you have a positive memory of your school, or do you have a negative one? What?
What do you mean?
Like, did you like going to school or not? You can be extremely honest here.
Yeah.
It's only recorded. Don't worry.
Yeah,
Nobody
it's only
will see
recorded,
it.
but just for
And
our
live
ears.
I hated school.
Yeah, also, I mean, I loved elementary school. I didn't like it after, but there is something a little bit like spooky, which I like. I think it's interesting to like take the idea of school not always from the sort of like cute, infantile, and like nice side of it. I like that you are it seems at least that you're playing with kind of like scary elements, especially like in the first rendering with the little like monster screaming with its teeth out, and then this sort of like bubbly geometry that almost looks like I don't know, like something very like organic. And maybe it's something that you really like you have to embrace. I don't know if it's like at the conscious level right now, but I think it should become. Oh yeah, the kawaii monster. Yes, Damjan, totally. Also, the fact that you're creating shadows with these elevated kind of like bubbly structures, you know, that also creates moments in the school that are sort of like different. Like again, when we're talking with my students in studio, they started like working on the school by thinking about their memories, and I would say that 80% of them mentioned the dark space at the end of the hallway, or the dark room behind the I don't know, the cafeteria. And it's funny because, you know, most of the time they spent it actually in class. They didn't spend it there, but their memory goes to this kind of like other spaces that somehow the way how they were presented with a lack of light made them sticky more to their mind, to their memory. So if we are like designing for kids, maybe those are the space that we have to look at, you know?
Yeah, but it's a good, interesting point. Like, you spend so much time in the classroom when you're a kid, but you don't remember that. You remember something, some other like passage or some kind of weird corner that maybe surprised you or something happened there. I think, I mean, in this project and in many other projects, we are seeing this. There is a desire to have like different kinds of kind of spatial organizations operating at the same time, right? And I think like what I'm a little bit kind of unclear maybe in this project about is what is the actual function or purpose of this like single surface line that goes through, like the Zaha silhouette, you know? What is it that you want with this Jiafeng? You know, I mean, if we're talking about this as, and I think we should talk about this actually as a kind of design-based approach to kind of modeling spaces, right? You're kind of interested in certain aesthetics. And I think Angelica is also right, like in identifying this as kind of a kawaii, scary, something in between. But what exactly do you want with this? Like silhouette, like a parametric, beautiful surface. I think it doesn't, I don't know if it serves any function other than kind of as a stand-in for your idea of architecture in some ways, right? So I would just, something that I found really amazing in the brief, was this idea that you might start designing from just a very constrained space, and then you start zooming out. And as you zoom out, you don't care about hierarchy. You're not tracing a line that is continuous. You're kind of tracing a series of moments, passages, of these kind of weird encounters. And that becomes more like maybe a field diagram, or like an aggregation of different kinds of spaces, rather than this kind of continuous compositional strategy, which I think is a top-down device in this case. But I mean, it's just something to think about.
I think totally, like how, if the next step is to populate or to multiply this, I think that Damjan is totally right. You have to think about the system you're creating, because now it looks like a closed system, right? And how do you multiplicate that? How do you aggregate? Do you aggregate more of it, or do you create a system that is capable of extending, like a field logic? I think that's super important in your case.
But the scale seems so large already. I mean, I don't know if it can grow. It seems like it might have already maxed out on the allowed space. I mean, I think on the one hand, we've already discussed the corridor as the occupied space. So in this project, you've kind of put that out in the open with this loop. And so I wonder about that and how you will occupy. Is it about occupying the loop, or it seems like that's the ground condition here. And then I'm not so sure about the I don't know what to call them. Those like bulbous roof structures. I just think that maybe in terms of, what are they actually, can you occupy them? They're so big. Well, I see now that they're moving. But, why would that be necessary in this case? If you're not really going to interact with it, if it's just about covering this like very open space, it seems kind of like not an unnecessary feature, because they're already so big, right? So I think I would revisit those and then really think about the loop, that loop kind of circulation.
A really interesting point about maybe we've reached the max scale. Maybe this is like 3 stadiums right now, and how do we fill that out as a school? It's a really great point.
And I don't know, I think I want to connect to what Claudia was mentioning. I think that this building looks like the TWA, that is a building very, very old. And I think that the logics, they maxed out in terms of space, as Claudia was saying, but also in terms of language. Like it looks like a lobby where the possibilities of interaction at the moment are very limited with the building. However, what is really, I think, appealing to me in this design is the fact that now you have been able to bundle and cluster the object, connecting them. You created the infrastructure, which is phenomenal, because now you have these gigantic highways of people moving from one class to the other, and you can start thinking what happened in between these spaces. And as Claudia was mentioning, these vaults, these big covers that you're creating are huge, and the spacing between the classroom and the roof is gigantic. So I think that the moment that you're going to start really looking at the potential of the spaces that you already designed, sketched, is going to give you a lot of possibilities of going inside those spaces and detailing them and understanding what the material can do. At the moment, we see a lot of texture that have been stretched on the geometry, but what if some of this texture, they become different materials, they become print, they become holes, they become lights? Then I think that you have at the moment a big massing and you have the bones, and you need to figure it out. What is this body of work that you're creating gonna do? How is it gonna operate? At the moment, I feel like it's very empty. It's just a shell. Let's figure it out. What is the content of it? And I think that you have potential, because as a volumetrically speaking, I think you have created more than enough material where to operate.
I love that idea, that now we fill it rather than expand it. Great. Thank you. Huaiben.
Hey, Rachel.
Hi. I'll press play.
Okay. This is my toys I started with. It is a really classic wooden rattle and a piggy bank. And I think the sphere volume of space inside of the piggy bank has a potential to keep my each classroom and all the furniture inside. And I think children, unlike adults or senior people, they really like the space they are able to climb up. I mean, run up or run down. So that's one reason I try to stack one classroom on the top of the other one. So I came up with these tower-like classrooms. And the organization of the whole classroom has more horizontal, but also the tower has the vertical quality. I also curious about how these small plastic stools for children could be scaled up to the architectural size. So what kind of the architectural elements it could be. So I made it become the purple rooftop structure of my tower, and also made it the basement of my tower. And even this colorful sculpture in the park for the exterior space. And this mountain-like landscape I have gives fluctuating exterior playground or park to children to just have fun or climb, have a sitting area, or have a lecture. So, and also there are a bunch of shiny metal cylinder stuff I like piling on the edge of the landscape to build a strong connection between the flat ground and my mountain-like landscape. That's it.
Thank you. I think Huaiben's our only student that's really been looking at more of a vertical classroom, which has been really interesting.
Huaiben, I'm really compelled by this design for some aspects that to me are interesting. The first one is that you didn't mention the specific role of each of these figure that you're creating, but I can imagine that this could become a way to organize the students according to different years. I studied in a school where you start from the ground floor, and every 2 years you were moving one floor because of the way that the architecture was structured. And these give a hierarchy, but not in terms of who is better and who is worse, or is on the right and who is on the wrong, like a podium would do, but in terms of personal growth. So the fact that you're looking at stacking elements and separating figures makes me imagine these spaces to become a way to organize also thoughts. So it could be a room where you study certain things, and it could be another room where you study other things. And the content could become some sort of a peekaboo in your buildings. So I can see a lot of openings, and it could become so exciting to walk in these spaces and suddenly see through. Have you been to a music school? Like generally they are organized similar to what you have in here, mostly because you're trying to separate instruments that they can't conflict to each other. So you're trying to keep things connected, but remotely, well, let's say the audio needs to be removed, but the view needs to be connected. So if you look at music schools, you're gonna find structures of organization similar to this one, where you don't put a trombone next to a trumpet because the waves, they are kind of interacting. So I find it very appealing. You're creating figures, you're creating hierarchy, but not in terms of structures of power, but in terms of ideas. So I think that you have a very interesting groundwork to work. Now, if I was new in the next weeks, I will really look at how these buildings, they are creating, how these figures are creating differentiation in between each other. Geometrically, let's say from a hard point of view, you're already trying to break them apart, but the material is unifying everything to the point in which you're trying to create one single entity out of multiplicity. I don't know if I will go in the direction. I think that you have the possibility to make them even more identifiable and even more clear in their persona and in their personality. And this is an opportunity that I think it could be very appealing. Bravo, I like it.
And thank you for your suggestion.
I think that more can be worked out on the inside of these, pods, because when I look at the interior view and I see the furniture and it's very small in comparison to the volume, and then I start to question the scale of the parts now, because at first I thought they were actually much more intimate volumes. So again, the question of scale, I think, needs to be addressed. And then to the point earlier about, making these pods have their own identity, maybe I would also consider how, if they are, they each have their own shape, okay, but what brings them together? I think there needs to be an element that connects. Maybe there might need to be an element that connects them all. Maybe it's actually about another element of drapery that happens over, so that there's so far we haven't, I don't know if we've seen so far more of a challenge between inside and outside. It's always inside, you're outside. What about the in-between? I think that you could introduce that in-between space further, that it's not always just completely open or completely inside.
Yeah, I agree with Claudia on scale. I think it's a very big point and a great question for your project. Like, because when we see some of the renders, it's clear that we are looking at a model somehow, almost like a physical model scale, right? And I think to kind of actually translate it literally into a project is very exciting. Like, especially in that like ocular opening that you have, and you can see the kind of big slab, which is really almost like part of a physical model, and then these kind of like strange furniture units that just look inserted there. I think you can kind of explore those effects in the project. They're kind of exciting. And the other, I was just reminded now when I was looking at your project. I mean, because you're making kind of a series of hilarious faces, or these kind of almost like heads from the object, from your kind of pots. So I was reminded of this project by Alvaro Siza in Porto for the School of Architecture. Probably you had this as a, right? You had this as a precedent, but I'm just going to post it here so you can see. It's actually kind of based on that idea of different faces, different kind of almost heads becoming a collection of buildings in space, right? And I think you're kind of on track. Although in your case, it's much more humorous and it's much more kind of caricature. You have these like big noses, almost like in French comics, right? like big noses, ears hanging out, stuff like that, which is pretty cool. So I think there is like a connection there, especially because the CISA project is a school of architecture, and it's supposed to like every building has its own kind of character. The question of character is what I'm trying to get to, but something to, I think, to consider in your project. Interesting.
Thank you. There's definitely like this underlying sense of humor that I think we could definitely ramp up a little bit. It would be great. Okay, 2 more projects. Thank you, everyone. Karen, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm Karen. Yeah, thank you. My classroom design is focused on the teddy bears and some other toys like bunny and dolls. I mashed these toys together to make the main furniture in the classroom to create a flexible space. The wooden desk and chairs shapes are like the abstract bears, and the other class's furniture group are some pieces that have been cut from the main furniture, which has same language of my toys. You can see some bunny and bears outline on it. And students' desks and chairs could be separately arranged at different space between this main furniture. And each of my classroom contains 2 classes, which arrange in different part of the room. From the plan, you can see that the desk and chairs could be arranged in different space, and teacher could use the center area of the main room to give a good view to the entire class. I create some height difference for my main furniture, and there have some holes in it so that it's more fun for students to explore in the classroom. And my design is to create a light sound feeling like this kind of translucent fabric to give it a warm feeling. And there also are some windows and skylights are open at the different part of the bear body. A student could get more sunlight in the classroom. And my project contains 4 clusters of bears with different posture combination. And these 4 clusters are separately arranged in the playground. Each class could have their own outdoor space to do any activities. And they also have some wooden outdoor sketch which has same language with my furniture. It could be some low wall for fun or some outdoor lawn chairs to sit. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Let me scroll across.
So can you say something about this? There is a in the project there is this like this part here. I don't know if you see my annotation. Like, I'm curious about that grid. It seems to be very significant, and I really like this idea of using a neutral grid to offset some of these more kind of rendered material effects, right? So I'm interested in that, how you think about this kind of, what is that space?
Actually, that's it's just a playground. I haven't designed too much. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's really cool, actually. I think to kind of when the tool or kind of your technique kind of pops back into the project and produces like unexpected effects. I like that. I think it's
I need to think about it later. Yeah.
You definitely have a lot of different materials going on, from the more felted, textural ones to more fabrics to a little bit of transparency. I think it's really interesting how you're starting to overlap and play with those materials. And you could really work with the scale of those texture maps and how they could start to work together or maybe bleed into each other. It'd be really interesting.
I really like this project as well, I think. Especially because we have this kind of open, kind of like cut plan or kind of top view that we can see inside, and you're starting to multiply the effects also from the inside to the outside. One thing that you probably should consider is like how the ground behaves in the project. This is something I think whenever you're dealing with this idea of using a kind of a spherical-like figure to produce space, you always have this question of what happens on the ground when it intersects with the ground. Right? Sometimes you want to maybe lift it and put it on a plinth. Sometimes you want to dig a kind of a hole, right? It like almost like so it levitates there, because all of these kind of characters that you're using, they have expression, they're characters, but they're eventually, as a type, I think they're very close to this idea of a spherical kind of building. And it's very difficult to ground a sphere. You know, it's not easy. This is a difficult problem. Right? And if you look at some of the history of how to ground a sphere, like from also Dule, for example, like 17th, 18th century kind of architecture, or even later, you will see that either the strategy is either to lift a sphere, and then you have almost like a pediment, usually kind of pyramid-like in a way, and then the sphere sits on top, or there is like a hole on the ground. The sphere kind of almost levitates there, so that you can enter it, basically. The problem also is the entry, how you enter the sphere. It's not clear, basically. Right? If you look at, for example, also the projects by Buckminster Fuller, which we should not be talking about in this studio, I guess, right? But like there is something there. His problem is how do you enter a sphere? Through where do you enter? Because it's kind of an ideal object. It's very difficult to work with. So I think in your case, you might want to start like thinking about maybe starting to design the ground as a sectional thing, so that it like starts allowing for different conditions, also for children to as an environment.
Yeah, I will start thinking about the ground. Thank you for your suggestion. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with you, Damjan, about that. At the point where the ground sometimes can even like submerge the teddy bears, almost it can become a sort of a blanket. Like looking at all the different like moments, how the teddy bear space and the ground can come together. So not only when the teddy bear is like nested into the ground, but also when the ground can sort of like go on top of it, over that, so that maybe the ground doesn't only have to happen at the level of the straight. You might have almost like in a Peter Eisenman ground that like you can kind of like walk on top of those teddy bears. Like the shape really suggests that they might be almost like heels. And you can work with like different elevations as well. Now you have like a lot happening at the 0 level and a lot of space above, which is not utilized. It almost feels like a warehouse somehow. And I think that, yeah, in that way you can use more into the vertical direction.
Keran, I'm actually kind of interested by the fact that we saw in the past a lot of time the use of figures as a brick. So you take a bear and then you start populating it, and then suddenly you're using the bear as your unit of construction, and doesn't really matter the figure. But in your case, I think you're doing something more interesting sometimes, like in the second render, let's say the first render of the second row, where your openings, they are basically there are indexes of the fact that this is a bear. So you're cutting the window just where the bear usually have like a different patch of material. With the ears, looks like you're creating some sort of glass on the bear. So I think that for me, this is an interesting approach, because instead of negating the figure that you have, you're trying to emphasize it. Now, I don't think this could be done all the time to not become extremely indexical. However, among all the openings that you created, a lot of them, they feel very independent to the point of being almost, yeah, just given. Like could be here, could be there, doesn't really matter. I like when there is a purpose beyond function. And I think that what you're doing here by emphasizing some of the anatomical features of the teddy bear could be a very fun, interesting aspect, especially if this can be connected to what happened also in the interior part of your bears, of your buildings, of your units. Because when you do a section, the tables and the organization of the space is completely disconnected to the perimetral spaces, the perimetral walls. And I think that that could be a very liminal space for you to be used. It could be very interesting to understand what is the relation in between the object that is containing and what is the content. In particular, if the relation comes through these openings that you're doing, if these openings, they become a way also to bring back the meaning of in your case, the bear, which to me, it needs to be in some way explained more than just being the unit that you're using to create your composition. And these happen when these openings are in some way related to the original object.
Yeah, I will think about it. Thank you, Cadioli.
I love those comments of the bear is like a landscape, yet a warehouse. Super cool, Karen. Lots to think about.
Yeah, I definitely need to think about the landscape and the ground, because now it's just a flat ground, no more design, because I was focused on the bear combination before. So yeah, I will try to design it.
Awesome. Okay. Last but not least, Kian, who loves to go last in every studio. So I'm going to go last today.
That
your payback.
Really, yeah, but I love this because I actually iterate for several versions of the video. So it's pretty fun. Anyway, let's go. So I'm Kian. Yeah. My project, waiting for.
There we go.
Okay, so my project explores the form of furniture and architecture infected by playable softness of toys. I'm interested in abstracting the skeleton from a pile of toys as a furniture's frame and filling them with softness for practical function. This balloon chair has a fossil chair skeleton and soft hair growing out. And this is the balloon sofa fossil tacticular legs supporting the main frame and holding the metallic balloon cushion with a furry blanket on the top. Okay, so the open classroom contains multiple balloon chairs in a circle and a pile of toys placing on the carpet in the middle for kids to play with. Soft fur and infects interior, making the architecture more toy-like. And additionally, the lecture hall located in the middle of the unit contains several carpet and balloon sofa. So the first floor mainly contains classroom and lecture hall for studying, several lounges for kids to have fun and rest. The second floor is for the group discussion dining, while the third floor is mainly for the entertainment only. The roof is infected and crystallized, allowing light to penetrate inside, as you can see here. While the complex refraction can create a beautiful line pattern inside. So the landscape keeps sprawling outward in the crown field. Its skirt defines a soft area for kids to chase around. The humps in the middle holds those classrooms that allow kids to explore inside the caves. Additionally, there are two secondary classrooms developed in the same languages, but they have multiple different layers inside. The inner layers grew more patterns, while the outer layers grew more silk-like appearance. So in my next phase of my project, I think I will keep developing the playable softness and to make it spreading out and interconnecting with each other until they conquer the site. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Kian.
I love the corn. I want to ask you about the corn. What is that? I remember there was a horror movie, Children of the Corn, in the 80s. I don't know if you know this film. It's like based on Stephen King, actually. So what is the corn?
Okay, so yeah, the corn is actually, it's just an idea. I discussed it with Rachael, and she mentioned that I feel like it's really important to add the corn inside this field because kids nowadays don't have kind of the chance to be exposed to the nature, especially this kind of high vegetation, which could provide infinite chances for kids to have fun.
I think it's a brilliant idea. You kind of want to escape from the school, you end up with a cornfield and you have to go back. There's nowhere else to go.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of interesting.
I love that title, like softness or softness infection. It reminds me of Jason Freeney work. Do you know it? I think it's a good reference in general for the studio. It's an artist that looks into like soft and cute toys, but tries to like create skeleton and make like the ugly part of what's inside. I feel like that could be a good reference for you to look at, because because I feel like there's this contrast between the softness that you're using and this infectious, like inside of the body, like flesh looking like things, which is a contrast in your aesthetic, which I find like fascinating.
Thank you.
And
it's
the
really
corn.
Yeah, definitely grew that as much as I can. Yeah, I'm thinking that to use this kind of softness to infect the rigidity. So at the first place, I only have the skeleton, and then gradually I grew those softness to add them, develop them in my design. Yeah.
Yeah, I was very intrigued by the material of your chairs, and I just dropped you in the chat a project by Emit09. They is basically like an inflated golden balloon, like hanging from the ceiling, and it's something that I really like. Also, as an idea, maybe here where the classroom maybe doesn't have to be defined every time, or the space of the classroom doesn't have to be defined every time, but maybe can be kind of like so light enough as almost like a balloon that can be like carried around and moved kind of like pretty easily, and then you just anchor it to, I mean, you have the cornfield, so those might become your anchors, you know. But I think that there is something extremely beautiful in the way how you're working with that material, almost like the next level of a Jeff Koons here to me. I think it's like pretty remarkable the way how you designed it.
Mm-hmm. I also like a lot the yellow goo which becomes the ground. This is something fascinating. The way that you have this like almost some kind of artificial slimy ground that devours the entire project. Right? It's kind of like goes on top, just produces all kinds of effects. But and then it just ends kind of on the perimeter, and then there's a cornfield. I mean, sectionally, it's an amazing idea. It's really awesome, super nice. The only maybe what I would question in this case are these metallic cage-like things on top. You know, do you need those, or it seems like you really wanted to have them? But,
I fight about this every day. Thank you, Damjan.
Yeah, that's actually, yeah, I'm thinking to make it thinner or to make it like hollow, have a pattern on it. But I haven't started to work on that because I was working on the landscape, all those devoured things. I really love this word devoured. It's super cool. Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot.
I don't know if, by the way, love this project. Like to me, when you showed the chair, I was like, I'm so into this understanding of softness, which is phenomenal to me. I'm gonna drop, let me see if I copy it properly. I'm gonna drop on the website. This was the Venice Pavilion in 2019 for Iceland at the Venice Biennale. And the artist whose name I cannot pronounce at all was working with fur as a way to create a cave. And whole understanding is working in between synthetic and real hair, fur, whatever. What I think is really successful in your project is your ability to work in between soft material and hard material versus soft geometry and hard geometry. And I think it's very fascinating, your understanding of the space through the use of this sort of carpet-like that you are creating, where there is a scene in your animation where you see the border of this metal sheet almost like lifting and showing what's underneath. And this way of understanding the boundaries to me is really appealing here. This part is really appealing. The fact that I can clearly understand that it is a carpet, that you are defining an area by placing a carpet, a soft element, but then refining with a metallic element, or creating a vault, which should be very hard, but using fur to break what is the typology is, to me, very interesting. I agree about the cage. I think that the cage is very thick, rigid, and harsh compared to your aesthetic. Your interior, your chairs are exquisite. There is a level of refinement, which is very, very clean. And I think that you understand what you need in the outside. This cage is your next design. You're not there yet. I think you know it too. And I'm very appealed by your design, and I think you're doing an incredible job. Really work on this cage, and yes, in the cornfield, because that's definitely the good things about the design.
Thank you so much.
Bravo, it looks fantastic.
You really created an LA landscape, by the way. Like this weird mix of nature and something extremely like synthetic and man-made. If you really like look around, like that is what is the city. And I like when you're thinking about the ground, I would like think in a way that sometimes there are elements out in the ground that are not designed, but they create the design of the city. And to me, it seems a little bit what you're doing here is like using kind of like ready-made objects, or like simulating a sort of like liquid, I don't know, weird kind of like toxic almost material. I think it's genius. It's really genius. Like, I think it might be one of the maybe most contextualized projects that we have seen today. That's great.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the comments.
I think also just the title of infection, I know it's like such a loaded word right now, but sort of implying that, you know, this sort of classroom setting, this place of learning is of like growth, of something that's living and growing and spreading out eventually onto the site, I think is like a really strong concept.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually something to consider about, like, to use this infection. It's kind of like a matter of time when you grow up, and also reflect the design progress. Yeah, thanks for the comments. It's really helpful.
Okay, I think that's it. Kian, that was such a great way to end. Kian's one of those students that changes his project every day, so who knows what it's going to be at final. I want to thank all the students. Yeah, no, I always say don't fix it, and he changes it.
Okay. Awesome.
I want to thank all your students for the amazing effort for today, and also to the critics for putting up with 3 hours. It was fantastic. You brought new ideas and new life and new optimism to the studio, things that I've been really focused in on, the form and the material, and the way that a lot of the conversations today were sort of role play or ideas about living in this space. I thought that was super, super helpful. So thanks to everyone.
Yeah, beautiful work, everyone. Thank you so much, Rachel. It's a pleasure to have
a discussion.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rachel. Congratulations to you students. Great work.
Thanks.
Ciao, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So are we going back to like the introduction room, or?
I don't think so. We're done.
Okay.
Oh, okay, cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You guys have somebody's having a party. You guys have Grasshopper workshop.
Sorry.
2 till 5. So I'll meet you briefly at 5 p.m. But we won't give you any new work until Wednesday, where we'll introduce the next stage. So after Grasshopper, we can have a quick chat at 5 on Monday. But that's it.
Oh, on Monday. Okay.
On Monday, yeah.
I see.
Yeah. So Grasshopper is compulsory. Please go 2 till 5, and then we'll meet at 5. But awesome work today. Have a great weekend. Recover.
Isn't ours 5 till 8?
Oh, really? No.
No, we're 2 to 5.
You're 2 till 5, so that Florencia and Marcelo can have studio. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, because I wrote down 5 to 8.
Yeah, Florencia and Marcelo have
you.
studio first because they're kind of older and they have kids, and William and I will have studio later.
Cool.
That's how we split it up.
Okay. Thank you.
It'll be a short chat on Monday. Yeah. Really great work today. It was wonderful to see the project get to this kind of complete stage, but now we can mess up again. I'll post the recording for you guys soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye people on YouTube.